We're going to open our meeting. This is a regularly scheduled meeting of the Town of East Bridgewater Planning Board. It's Monday evening, the November 7th, 2022. Currently present for the board are regular members Lala, O'Reilly, Bates, Ken, and Gardner. Also present is our office staff, Ellen McKenzie and Candy Boyle. So we've got minutes from, looks like 4 dates. June 16th, 2022, July 18th, 2022, August 15th, 2022, and September 19th, 2022. And for the record, this meeting is both being televised and audio recorded. So on those minutes, what's your pleasure on those minutes?
They were all sent out to everyone.
All right, hearing nothing at this time, we'll come back to that in a little bit later in the meeting. Next item on the agenda is town resident Tom Askey, 359, 365 North Bedford Street. He has put together some information and a proposal for potential rezoning on the property that he owns on those two addresses. So, Tom, if you would, can you officially introduce yourself for the record? And
my name is Tom Askey, 359 North Bedford Street, East Bridgewater.
could you go ahead and explain to us what your proposal is?
Well, first of all, thank you all for meeting with me tonight and listening. Hopefully, some of the ideas in this proposal will resonate with the board a little bit. I'll just kind of read this. I think the quickest thing to do is just read what we've got here, and that way we'll get through it as quickly as possible. First of all, I'll just tell you a little bit about myself. I'm a recently retired project superintendent and project manager for Turner Construction Company. I've worked in the commercial construction industry for 40 years, and I just recently retired, pretty much in the Boston metropolitan area. I have a Boston ABC license as well as a Massachusetts construction supervisor's license. Diane is sitting right behind me, Diane Artenzi. Askey. We purchased 359 North Bedford Street in 1986. My wife Diane grew up in the house next door, which is part of this proposal, at 365 North Bedford Street. She's been a lifelong resident of East Bridgewater, and she recently retired from the East Bridgewater School Department. So getting right into it, now that the new sewage district has been approved on the west side of Route 18, the question that I have here is, will that affect the development on the west side of Route 18? And that's where we reside, and that's, the location there is B4. The current B4 designation, the way I am looking at it, will prevent transitional development. In order for B4 to work, a developer would need to buy several single-family dwellings, and I am thinking that this is very unlikely scenario now that the new sewage district extends from Grove Street all the way to Whitman on the other side of the street. So my contention is the fact that the new sewage district is on the east side of the street going from Grove Street all the way to the Whitman line. It now changes the picture on the other side of the street, which is also zone B4. I think it's unlikely that someone would come in and do a high-intensity type development on the east side of Route 18 because they're all scattered, small lots. There's not very much room there. It only goes from Wildwood Ave to Old Harvard Street. It's not a long stretch. There's another thing that I want to explore tonight. So what I'm proposing is a B2 designation would allow transitional development. suited to the current conditions. If you look at it now, it looks like a B2 area. It doesn't look like a B4 area. The other side of the street certainly will look like a B4 area down the road, hopefully, as now that we've got sewerage and that it will be developed. And I know there's some pretty big projects in the pipeline. Another thing that I'd like to look at briefly is a revision to the estate lot language would be a way to also get the property moving, at least my property moving. That's not really where I want to go, but that's part of this proposal. The big thrust that I want to have here tonight is I think we should go to B2 rather than keeping it at B4. So, on to the second page. It just shows a picture of my mother-in-law's house, who passed away a year and a half ago. My wife owns that property, and the house on the right is where we live. We've lived for the last 36 years. Okay, getting into the estate lot option. The following items meet current estate lot requirements. Lot frontage, oh, sorry, too loud. Okay. Well, the idea here is that we would take down 365 North Bedford Street, remove that home, put a 45-foot right-of-way in, and it would create a 95,000 square foot lot. The remaining house would be on a 35,000 square foot lot. I think we would comply with all the estate lot language that's currently in place except for a couple of items. And that goes on to the next page, the third page. So the house at 365 North Bedford Street has been in the Ortenzi family since it was constructed in 1950 by Diane's parents. The house has never been sold. The title of the property has passed from Lorraine and Alfred Ortenzi to Roger and Diane Ashley Ortenzi. That passed to them in the 90s. Ownership will pass to Diane in fall of this year. That's already taken place. So the big question is, does this ownership chain within the Ortenzi family satisfy the common ownership language? So we bought our house at 359 North Bedford Street in 1986. The estate lot requirement states common ownership dating back to 1982, which is 40 years ago. That's what it would require, that you'd have to own the property for 40 years in order for an estate lot to qualify. So my question here is, what is the intent of having an estate lot requirement that requires 40 years of continuous ownership? And would it be possible to updating that to like 1992, which would be, we've been there 36 years, so we would qualify for an estate lot. So that's one option that I'm looking at here. It doesn't require a zoning change, but it would require a slight change to the estate lot language. Instead of going back to 1982, you change it to 92, or even further up. Maybe 30 years is too far back, too. I think that just hasn't been touched upon, and maybe that's something that the board could look at, when you, every spring you go to vote on changes to the zoning laws, and maybe that's something that you could look at, and that would help us out. And we would, if that passed, and that was all that passed, we could take down 365 and put up a house out back. But that requires the help of the board. I can't do that. You guys would have to do that. You'd have to take it to town meeting if you were in favor of it, and so forth. So that's the estate lot issue. Let's go on to the next issue, which is kind of the meat of the presentation, which would be the reasons why I think we should change to B2 rather than B4. So we're on the page here, showing the zoning map of the town. And once again, now that the sewerage district has been settled, future high-intensity development is likely to steer towards the west side of Route 18. The remaining frontage on the east side of Route 18 is limited. A 5-unit medical storefront is being built on the old Nisby property, and another storefront is being proposed 2 doors down. Changing this B4 district would not push current or future projects out of compliance. A B2 designation would possibly open the door for some smaller scale development on the property behind some of these buildings that are being built on Route 18 now. So once again, I'm saying that if changing things to B2 would not limit anything, it would not put anything out of compliance, it might spur some development across the road, which I think everybody in town wants to see Route 18 developed. They don't want to see things lingering, like some of the houses down further in Whitman and Abington that just sat there for years and years. And so I'm hoping that, you know, you can see that, you know, maybe there is some, there's a good, you know, possibility that you could rezone over there. And I could, you know, you'll see in my options 2, 3, and 4 what we could do there. So then the next page is the storage district. And down on the right-hand corner, you see my lot and my mother-in-law's lot, outlined in blue. It's a blue hatched area. So that's a pretty big area that is coming up. I think it's pretty exciting for the town that we're gonna be able to see some things moving along here. There's a lot of land there. It looks like you've got some land that the town owns that you're gonna be able to build some ball fields. That's great. You're gonna get some housing that might satisfy some of the Section 8 qualifications that the town needs to meet. Commercial development, there's a lot of room there to build. And I hear there's gonna be some more medical facilities across the street, a 400,000 square foot warehouse. That's all great news for the town, more tax revenue. I think it's a good thing. So getting onto the next page here, the B2 district language appears to be suited to the current conditions here at 359 and 365 North Bedford Street. 1 and 2, and under the B2 language, basically it allows everything that's in B4 right now, but B2 also allows the construction of 1 and 2 family dwellings. Right now, you can't do that with B4. But if you look around down there, there's multifamilies, there's apartments, there's some single-family houses. So with a B2 rating, a B2 district, the B2 calls for using the R2 setbacks, and so that's in the drawings that you're going to see coming up. The R2 setbacks are what are shown on these drawings. So you can read this stuff that's outlined in red there. I don't think I have to read it, but basically it says B2 is to preserve the residential amenity of existing developed thoroughfares which are undergoing pressures for commercial development by easing their transition to more intensive but compatible uses while emphasizing the preservation and use of existing structures, providing reasonable buffer zones and providing for allowed uses that are compatible with the nearby residential areas. It's another item it says is to provide property owners in such transitional areas an opportunity for higher economic return on their land without severely diminishing the amenity and residential value of other properties within the close proximity of the zone. I think that's a very relevant paragraph to what I'm trying to propose tonight. And at the bottom of the highlighted area, it does say 1 and 2 family residential dwellings. You have to apply with lot area and other dimensional requirements per the R2 zone. All right, so getting into option 2, it shows a 45-foot right-of-way that extends back to the old railroad bed that's still in existence. This would show 2 house lots, 31,000 square foot approximate house lots. The numbers here are not exact. If anything, they're a little low. So they'd be around 32,000 square foot lots, and the house out front would be a 36,000 square foot lot. Like I said, 45-foot right-of-way that would extend all the way back to the railroad bed. Now, that the reason why I'm doing that is I've spoken to all my neighbors, and they're also interested in this proposal. I know my neighbor to my left, Mr. Gautuma, he would like to put a house back there if that was possible, if this was a road or a driveway or whatever it was. And then to his left is the Dr. Patel, and he's building the new medical retail storefront right down on Route 18. And he's got a lot of land in the back that he can't access because there's a marsh in between his building and some very good land behind the marsh. So I'll get to that in the ensuing pages. But, so I think that's the idea here. This just isn't about me building a couple of houses and benefiting from a zoning change. It's a neighborhood thing here, I think. So, all right, getting on to the next option. The R2 setbacks would also allow 3 houses, not just 2. And this is a depiction of basically what it would look like. I think we qualify for all the setbacks. In this case, each lot would have no less than 100 feet frontage, and each lot would be at least 20,000 square feet. Once again, a 45-foot roadway that goes all the way back to the railroad bed. On to the next possible option. That would be 2 48,000 square foot lots. It doesn't have to be that. It could be some facsimile of that, and that would be a 2-family house in the back. That would be another thing that would be allowed under this type of a proposal, if you went to B2. So there's just some pictures of what could happen there. And then on to the next page, where it's taken off the Mass GIS map. And it shows some of the land out behind what's already built out there on Route 18. It's all landlocked right now. And you can see Dr. Patel's property. There's quite a marsh in between there, and he's built from one end of his property to the other. He's got a drainage, stormwater runoff on one side, and his septic's on the other side of the building. He really can't get back there. So I had spoken to him about this, and he really was enthusiastic about the possibility of accessing some of the land out back. Whether it be for commercial or if it was residential, you know, it really doesn't matter at this point. But if I did put a road in there or a driveway, other people could use it. We could make that work somehow, get the ball rolling. And then Mr. Gartuma, I think the road would pass through his property. Maybe he would put a house back there, maybe he wouldn't. I don't know at this point. But I just think it's a way of getting the area developed. And there is some good land. It goes over into the CubeSmart property. Actually have put a call into them. They're a huge corporation, and I don't expect to hear back from them unless there was some solid proposal or something really happening on our end. But there is some land back there. There's a hill back there. It's not all wet. Perhaps that's something that could be developed too. So there's a couple of different depictions of that here. The last 2 pages. It shows, this page shows the actual outline of the CubeSmart buildings. So, and this is all if we could go B2. And even if it was B2, you could still put commercial back there, although I think it's kind of chopped up and it's small. So you wouldn't be able to do too much. I think it's more suited to putting a road in and some houses. And Dr. Patel he was interested, well, maybe I would sell some of that and he would purchase the house to the north of him, which is still, it's part of the old Nisby family. It's one of their houses that's still there. And he said that was his thought, that he would give up some of that, maybe sell that, and then buy the house to the right and then clean up his lot. I think everybody's probably familiar with that house that I'm talking about. Okay, and getting on to the last page, when I went to the track meeting, and people were actually pretty enthusiastic about this plan. I got a lot of good response from everyone. And one of the members of the Conservation Commission, he said, well, you have an easement on that property, so it would probably be a good idea to at least get the ball rolling on what that means and if there's wetlands there and so forth. So I do have a state drainage easement on the property. There is a concrete conduit that comes back on my property. It goes back 138 feet. It goes to a manhole, and then there's a swale that goes all the way to the railroad bed. There's also a small 12-inch dual-wall polyethylene pipe that's installed that diverts some of the water underground and back into the trench. That was put in back in, I think, 2004. I pulled a permit with Mass Highway, and they let me put that in back then. Earlier this week, Brooke Monroe, I think most of you people are probably familiar with Brooke of Pinebrook Consulting. She walked the property on Tuesday, and her comments were as follows. The drainage swales highlighted in blue would be classified as intermittent streams. This consultation was an initial visit for discussion purposes for today's meeting. So I wanted for at least no flagging was completed, but at least it was an initial meeting with somebody who took a look at it. There's no wetlands on the property. It's just this drainage swale that's been there since 1927. The pipe that's underground's been there probably since 1927, and that's a deeded. That easement is on the deed, but if you look at the current deeds, it's not there. You have to go all the way back to 1927 to find it, but it is there. And I actually talked to Mass Highway about it too, and they said if I did subdivide the property down the road, if something happened, they could look at revisiting the language on all the deeds to make sure that the new owners were familiar with, the rules governing easements on your property and so forth. So, you know what, I'll end it there and take any questions. Probably have a few, so.
So I just
I'm
had one
sure you
quick
do.
comment. So I did
Yes, sir.
notice the lack of an easement on the current deeds,
Right,
and would also like to know that it's actually illegal in the state of Massachusetts to prepare a conveyance deed without the easements from the prior recorded deed. So I don't know who did that, but
well, you have to go back to 1927.
doesn't matter.
Roy.
It's been illegal since the registry was first formed.
Right.
Quitclaim deeds require that all language on the prior deed be replicated in the subsequent deed.
Well, I had
I don't
to
know how
go.
that disappeared sometime in the 30s, the late 30s, I think it seemed to have disappeared.
Yeah, in fact, all the easements that are along the road here, there's 2 other easements, and none of them, they all go back to 1927. For whatever reason, I don't know, it slips between the cracks, but I'll tell you one thing, if this moves forward, that's not gonna slip between the cracks, because I've already been down to Mass Highway, and we will update the easement on if there is, if this does go forward, for sure.
So there are a couple of other things going on right now. We just received from the state of Massachusetts a grant, a $75,000 grant to update our master plan. One of the areas of focus would be Route 18 north of Grove Street, including the business zones and the industrial zone, especially since now we've got our initial agreement with Brockton for storage.
Right.
I think I want to make it clear that initial agreement is not considered final and non-expandable. Brockton has made that clear, we have made that clear, the state has also made that clear. The other thing I want to note is all of the new development on the east side of Route 18, since the zoning changes were adopted in '87, has been commercial. And so far, it's doing pretty much what we want. There is one site that we're not overly pleased with because of the way it was done, and that hasn't been built on yet. That's the site that's to the north of the former Nisby house.
Right.
My understanding right now is there's negotiations going on, potentially purchase the Nisby house and add it to that parcel to make it more marketable, which is the exact intention of that zoning change to begin with, was actually to put together multiple parcels, to make them larger parcels, to fit the commercial use there. So my only comment at this time is we'll take this under advisement, but I expect that we wouldn't probably propose any zoning change until such time as we get an update to the master plan, especially in those 3 districts that are shown in the late 1980s master plan.
Right.
Which is where the focus of that update was intended to be, now that it's clear that both the state and the city of Brockton jointly in favor of us expanding that district along the Route 18 corridor.
So, when you say the district, what do you mean the storage district?
Yes.
So, okay, did you go to the public meeting on, there was a public meeting on the new sewage plan.
I actually participated in the Storage District development for 4 years.
Right. Well, I
I
did.
know what plan was to address the immediate pending projects, which you touched on, the potential housing project at the Whitman line that would go from basically North Bedford Street all the way over to Winter Street.
Right,
The development of the property south of that down towards Highland Street, in which there's been a recent special permit issued for
right,
a 400,000 square foot warehouse, in addition to the expected expansion of uses of the former Foxborough Company property and another building, the Compass Medical Center, which needs sewerage to be able to expand the Equity Industrial Partners land, which is the owner of the underlying land.
right.
So they want to expand behind the building. So that's, initially, the calculation of the storage capacity needed was to address those specific issues. There's no question, based on the advice we've been given and the information coming back from the state, that the availability of sewage capacity from Brockton could easily be, maybe easily is not the right word, but certainly could be increased.
By how much, Roy, do you know?
There's no numbers at this point, but every year Brockton has been rebuilding parts of their stormwater management system, which takes stormwater runoff out of their storage system and drops their daily flows. They're already expanding in Whitman. They're clearly going to be expanding in the town of East Bridgewater. Town of East Bridgewater, in fact, just received the state grant for an amount of $4 million to cover some of the capital expenses of the initial development. So my view would be, until such time as we have a view of a master plan and where the rest of that could potentially go. And the master plan would have to take into account the potential for sewerage expansion.
So you think there's enough capacity in Brockton to go across Route 18 and get all that area over there? Because when I went to the public meeting on that, they didn't address, they didn't speak to that at all. In fact, the way I thought it was, they didn't want to cross Route 18 because it would require putting a sewage line down Route 18, which the state really would be opposed to.
Well,
You'd have to rip up the whole road.
That's actually incorrect, because we're not going to cross Route 18.
Right,
We're going to bring it down on the properties, and we'd only need a 90-degree crossing. We wouldn't run it down Route 18. The sewer line's going to be run off of Route 18.
so then it would have to run parallel with Route 18 somewhere to reach
Somewhere
all of these
along the
properties.
frontage of the properties, which is very typical on existing roadways, is to run them on the frontage of the properties that are going to get the benefit of the sewer line. Typically, they're no longer running state highways. That's now a no-no from the state.
I thought that was why,
Which
that
is
was
exact-
one
Which is
big
exactly
reason.
what we did at Carriage Crossing with the town of East Bridgewater sewer system.
Right,
We put a 90-degree crossing, and then the sewer line actually runs off the state layout.
right. But you'd have to cut across property after property with a sewer line if you weren't gonna be.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's
And the-
easy,
and the bottom-
it's easy to see how they're doing it on the north side, I mean, on the west side, I can see that, but the east side would be another story. There's so many houses there. But, okay.
Well, that's not an issue under state law, because we can do that under state law with a simple taking of an
Right.
easement.
It'd be almost easy to build a sewage treatment plant on the other side of the street, but,
Not under current state law, because you have to have a discharge
right.
point. And the
Well-
only discharge points that are being allowed now under state law are in-ground discharges.
Right.
Well,
So,
we can't do an in-ground discharge in East Bridgewater, because the only place we could find to do one was down at the central school, and it took us 3 years to do that.
well, I think if we wait till, the sewerage on the east side of the street, it could be a real, real long time. And I don't want, that's probably the perfect scenario, but I don't want the perfect to be in the way of progress either. And I think what I'm proposing here is progress. And, the small area that's out behind us that runs from Paul Wolf Motors to Wildwood Ave, that's a very small area that we're talking about here.
It's also an area with direct access to Route 18.
Right.
which is the highest traffic count route available
That's
in the
right.
town of East Bridgewater.
Right.
And any businesses that get added to there would not add to even a percentage of 1% traffic to Route 18.
Right. Well, I think the things that I'm proposing here, the zoning change, I think all my neighbors are for it, and they actually told me they'd be willing to write letters in favor of it. I think, you could speak to them yourselves. I mean, it's not a lot of people. It's Dr. Patel, it's my next-door neighbor, Mr. Gatuma. I spoke to Jimmy Wolf, and he's spoken to his mother, and they own Paul Wolf They're all in favor of it as well. That's pretty much it. It doesn't really affect a lot of people.
So I'll leave it, questions or comments from the rest of the board, feel free to jump in.
Yeah.
I would just say, that you've obviously put a great deal of thought into this. I commend you for that. I commend you for the product that you put before us. But I do agree with what Roy is saying as far as the need to, come up with some sort of a cohesive plan for the entire stretch of Route 18. I mean, right now, it's a mishmash of various zones, and I think it cries for that. So that would certainly be the approach that I would favor as well.
Anyone else? All right, so thank you, Tom, for the presentation, and we'll take a look at this. We'll also forward it over to, we haven't sorted out directly who's going to be helping us with our master plan update, but I believe it's going to be the Old Colony Planning Council. We would certainly pass this along to them as well to,
So what would be the process be, Roy, if I wanted to continue this process?
well, if you wanted to continue it on your own with your, potentially with your neighbors and abutters, you'd have to petition the selectmen with an actual worded article to go to town meeting.
Go to town meeting, so I could go to the Board of Selectmen on this.
And then they'd forward it to us for a recommendation to be made at town meeting floor.
Right, which it sounds like you would not recommend it.
I don't want to say that right now, but I think there's other things in the works that need to be addressed before we could get to a point where we'd be ready to actually,
Well, what
Make
would
a
those, what
recommendation.
would those things be?
well, the fact that we're going to redo the master plan for that area, number one, and the fact that we've got to see in the long term what the sewerage capacities would be based on the number that we've already received from the state in Brockton and the number of what we would actually be using at that site.
And you're saying that once again, you're saying that sewage would come across Route 18. That's what you're saying by talking.
Well, I can't say now that it won't. I think we need to look at we already understand, just based on what's happened in just the last year and a half, since we started developing the sewer district, how much the value of the land in the business districts changes when sewer becomes available.
Yeah, absolutely. I would have.
Massive change.
When I heard about this, I thought, great, we're gonna get sewage, but then that didn't happen. So, and when I went to the public hearing on it, they basically said it's not crossing Route 18, but you're saying otherwise. That was the message
I'm saying
that they
that
gave.
we're working on getting a master plan to find out what the next step in all of that's gonna be.
Okay. Well, I hope the board, takes a look at my plan and keeps it in your file somewhere, and, like I said, don't let the perfect be in the way of progress, because this is something that could happen. And I think the abutters to our property would be very happy and, to develop some of the property behind the existing buildings. It's not gonna stop anything on Route 18. This won't stop anything on Route 18 at all.
Except
All the
that's-
other projects, they're still gonna go forward.
More importantly, that's the only piece on Route 18 that has any depth to it on that side of the road. Everywhere
true.
else, there's shallow wetlands just behind the road.
I know that. I know, and
That's the most developable piece from a business standpoint.
That's why I've designed this so that you have a right-of-way that goes back to the railroad bed. And that can turn north.
putting
and
residential-
all those properties could be accessed,
Putting residential
property.
buildings back there doesn't address that.
but the amount of land that's back there, commercial, it's enough for a road and a couple of houses, that's it. I mean, you can look at it, take a walk back there with me someday if you want.
Well, I know what it looks like. We've looked at it on the maps, we've looked at it on the GIS maps, we've looked at
Right.
it at the wetlands map.
Right.
To try and decide what we should do there. That's in fact why it was labeled B4 to begin with the initial master plan.
So even if you left it B4, how are they ever gonna access it then? That doesn't change that. That still, it doesn't change it. So, if you left it at B4, they still can't access that land. But, you know.
All that needs to happen is a developer buy 2 or 3 of those parcels.
Well, like you said, the only parcel there that goes back to the railroad bed is mine, basically, right now, so.
So all that they have to do, if they've got a potential to put sewerage there, all that they would have to do is make an offer that would take into account the fact that sewerage was available.
Well, once again, that sewerage issue, I think that could be, that could be 40 years down the road. I mean, it may never
Well,
happen.
I'm 43 years in trying to get sewerage in that area.
I know,
43
I know
years.
you are. Yeah, you've worked hard at it.
So-
There's
so-
no doubt about it.
I'm not gonna say that in another couple of years, once we've ironed out where we're gonna go with the existing storage, that it can't be expanded.
Right, but this idea cleans up the area now, and it I'll end it. I don't want to keep going here. I know you don't want, you probably don't want to hear it, but,
Well, I understand,
you know,
I understand what's going on here, Tom. What's going on is every landowner in the town has a right to try and to develop their property as best as they see fit in what's in the most financial interest for the long-term value of that property. I have no problem with that at all,
right,
none whatsoever. But the job of us sitting up here is to try and make sure that in the long-term best interest of the town, we make sure that we don't do something now that in the short term is gonna negatively impact the long term.
how would this project that I propose be, what negative impact would that create? I mean, I don't see it. I don't see how that would be a
That's the only
negative.
section of Route 18 north of the center, and actually, if you look at it pretty much south of the center, in which there's a developable piece of land with a relatively few houses left on it. 2 of them are already gone. Actually, more of them have gone. Because a lot of the development that's gone on over the last years since the master plan was put in have taken into account the changes in those business zones.
Right, but even though
I mean, Dr. Patel's office is an example of that.
right, but he can't access the back of his property now, the way he constructed the building. It's just not accessible.
That was his decision. He had the opportunity to buy the adjacent property and declined to do that.
Right.
I mean, I won't get into the details, but you can look at what the adjacent property sold for according to the assessor's office on its last sale,
Which adjacent, the one north or south?
north.
Oh, the vacant lot now, the one where the house was torn
Oh,
down?
the one with Nisby's old house on it.
Oh,
It's still
okay.
there.
He actually told me that he would be interested in buying that. So, I spoke to him this week. And then, but that land in the back is still not accessible, even if he bought that. That would just square off his property, which I understand. Visually, I think it would be a good purchase for him to get rid of that. That's an eyesore as far as his property goes. But,
Well, it's an eyesore for some, but it's also
It's a home.
significant benefit to either one of the 2 abutters.
right,
An increase of land, even though it's a relatively small lot, is a significant value in the business district.
right. So that, he did mention that to me, yes. So
So let's leave it at that. We'll take a look at this. The board is free to take a look at that, and if the board wishes, we could have a further discussion at another board meeting.
Any idea how long the master plan revision will take?
I'm not sure, because that information just came out in Mass Municipal Association's newsletter with a link to the website that was just posted the day before that said that grant has been officially granted, along with the sewerage improvement grant of $4 million. So I'm not sure how far that's gone, other than we know that the intent was to, if we were to receive the grant, to dovetail in with OCPC and see where we go.
there was one other thing I wanted to mention, and I'm sorry I didn't, and I'll end it after this, but the houses that I wanted to build, I certainly, everybody has kids and know plenty of young people that are trying to buy houses, and they're all being priced out of the market. Well, my idea here is to build something that's affordable, no McMansions, something that kids can afford, keep the price point low. I wanted to build super energy efficient houses with like an R40 walls, R60 roof, maybe radiant heat in the floor, and keep the price point down. Possibly
I think
slab.
that just from a planning perspective, that needs to all mesh with the intent and purpose of what's gonna happen on Route 18. I mean, that's a noble goal. However, is that the best use and the most efficient use for the town of East Bridgewater, that section of Route 18 will be made? So, I mean, that's
So
where I, at least temporarily part company.
Right.
I think our goal, and the goal I've had since we adopted as part of that whole master plan in the 1987 zoning changes, when we adopted the adult retirement planned unit development, was to do exactly that, to provide a place for the older citizens to go, so the existing houses in town could be resold at a reasonable price, and that the citizens that were moving out of those houses could buy houses at a reasonable price.
That would
We all know that doesn't work. We all know that the marketplace drives that.
right.
Most of those over 55 homes in the 4 developments we have in town are selling in the range of the high $300,000 to $400,000.
Well, that was
And they're not the affordable housing we would like to get. And that's not driven by the developer, that's not driven by individuals trying to do development, that's not being driven by the applicant who gets the approvals for that development. That's being driven by the marketplace.
This could be
And
55
there's
and
nothing in this room, and there's nothing under zoning that's gonna change that. What a house sells for in the marketplace is simply based on the business part of the marketplace. No matter how hard we try up here, and we've tried multiple times to find a way to get more affordable housing in town, unless it's under some kind of state program, it just doesn't happen.
Right, that's why they have 40B and everything else, and that's why that happens, but that would be another thing, 55 and up. That would be something that, is possible too.
I mean, my wife and I have looked into selling our property, which the price that the real estate agencies are putting on it is stupid, in my opinion.
Yeah,
But then when we turn around and find, well, where are we gonna go?
exactly. We're
Well-
all in the same dilemma.
We can take 75% of it to buy a property in a retirement community, and then spend 35% of it to pay for the annual fees and expenses. So,
It's a vicious circle. You can't get ahead of it, that's for sure. We're all in the same boat. Our kids are too.
I don't dispute that.
So, and the other thing I was gonna say is that, there's a shortage of housing too.
Yeah, we agree,
And,
we agree with that
I-
100%.
Looking at the Old Colony Planning Council website and looking at their, some of their tutorials, they're talking about towns being, housing friendly. And that's what this is about, being housing friendly.
Well, we're working on being housing friendly with the potential project that's gonna come up hopefully on the north end of Route 18 to try and address some of that.
Right. Now, would that be houses or apartments or? what would that-
Combination of 3 or 4 things.
Yeah.
Duplexes, houses, townhouses, apartments. Should be a combination of multiple things. Probably all as part of one or more of what we refer to as friendly 40Bs, where the developer and the town work together to come up with an acceptable project.
I
Or
see.
projects, as the case may be.
Okay. All right. Well, if I could be included on some of those talks about, the master plan, I guess that'll all be
There
coming.
should be some
forward.
information coming out, I would think, within the next, month or so from the Board of Selectmen, how we're gonna move forward on that. I'm not sure that they've even officially announced that.
Right.
It kind of caught all of the town officials by surprise when the Mass Municipal Association in their newsletter posted that link of grants, and we were in there, and I think we had been informally notified, but I don't think the town had any opportunity to let the townspeople know we had that, and it was already posted by Mass Municipal Association. But, all right, thank you, Tom.
Thanks very much.
Thanks, Tom.
Okay, thanks for your time.
Okay, bunch of things going on here. Down on the action discussion, and, oh, I'm sorry, I don't want to skip 47 West Union Street, so why don't you gentlemen come up if you would?
Evening.
So we have received some feedback from the building inspector, building commissioner as well,
Okay.
that he feels that this use fits the current wording in the zoning bylaw.
Okay.
So I'm gonna leave it up to the board as to where we wanna go with this. I think we have received a copy of the land court plan that dates back multiple decades,
Right.
but defines officially what those boundaries are.
Right, and we did have it surveyed by professional land surveyor. That was all staked out. Reason he didn't draw anything up, because he said it's a waste of money on our part, because it's exactly what what we sent in for the plot plan with the.
So, Rob, could you blow that up so that
Ryan.
that triangle is really the parcel we're referring
Yeah.
to? That black surrounding triangle? Doesn't wanna blow up, huh?
No, it usually gives me an option.
If I put my fingers on there and move them, will it?
Maybe. It's a touch screen.
You never know, right?
No,
I guess not.
that's the only one we have, right?
As far as I know, I did actually go down on the land court and pull a copy without that black line on it and blow it up on my home computer, and you do get a slightly better view of it, but because of the size of the overall property that was recorded at the land court and their requirements, they had a maximum size that could be.
Right.
So it doesn't,
Oh, there you go.
okay, so it actually shows that existing building was there
Yes.
when the land court plan was done. So in any case, I think, regardless of our, I think view of the size of the lot and all that, given that the building inspector has indicated that he feels that's an appropriate. One of the issues we had a brief discussion about was the parking that is in the downtown business district. The downtown business district is allowed to use the on-street parking as part of their parking requirement. And there is on-street parking in that area, really on the opposite side of the street, but there is downtown on-street parking available. So given that, I'd leave it up to the board as to how we want to approach this.
Can you describe specifically what improvements will be made to the lot and the building?
Yes, the lot will be paved with some green area, certain areas. The building will be, the front of it will be redone, so for a door opening. Right now, it used to be in a garage. It was framed out in texture T111 with a couple windows in it. So that's gonna be remodeled, repainted. As far as on the outside, just clean up some of the overgrowth, pave the area where the cars are gonna be parked on the property, and, yeah, there you go.
The plan seems to indicate that the spaces where the vehicles would be stored
Yep.
would be on a bed of crushed stone as opposed to paved.
No, it's gonna be paved, yeah.
Kevin, you brought it up.
So if you're gonna pave it, where's the stormwater gonna go?
It's not gonna completely be paved, I mean, you're gonna have, the grass area, which is your public property in the front. There's gonna be some, stormwater, it's gonna go where it's going now, really. There's it's good, other than the front being paved, the strip of it, to allow the cars to be on. To the left of that building, that's gonna be a grassy area because it's a septic area. So that's all gonna be grass. There's gonna be some grass over to the side.
Can you pop up the latest plan that we had got? Is that on there?
I think you ran past it, Rob.
So that kind of shows you where.
So, what I see there is I see paved in a whole bunch of places, some of which are on parking spaces, some of which are on places where it doesn't appear that vehicles would be. So, I'm not quite sure what's paved, what's not paved, Frank, or,
Well,
Are
I mean,
we-
anything that has a car on is gonna be paved. I mean, we're not.
so are we suggesting that the area below the septic, all the way to the line where it says lawn and paved, that would entirely be paved?
Which area? So from the septic system, to the ground?
So it would appear that this is all going to be paved land, right?
Yeah.
And this little triangle here would be lawn area.
Yeah.
This will all be lawn.
That's all lawn, yep. You got lawn,
Then,
that's gonna be paved in front of the building. That's the building right there.
okay, so,
If you prefer, we can do crushed stone. I mean, it doesn't have to necessarily be paved as long as it's a surface that doesn't mud up. I mean, I understand the stone will be better for leaching as well. We can cover the whole thing with 3/4 stone and then just keep, that way, or I can 3/4 stone the whole area and then pave some of the area. You're concerned with leaching.
I mean, is it your intention, ask this way,
Yeah.
that you are actually going to do in-person business there, or that you are simply looking to attach an address to a license so that you can sell cars by internet or other means and simply have a place for me to come and pick them up when I do a deal with you?
No, it's actual sale.
Actual
So
display.
that building is gonna be turned into a small office. I mean, is there gonna be internet business? I guess. But yes, there's actual, physically gonna be cars out there on the lot for sale.
So you're actually gonna propose to the selectmen a retail sales used car lot with 4 spaces? Which is what you're showing on your plan?
Well, there's more than.
There's 4 spaces, not counting
Oh, on
owners
the side,
parking
yeah,
and
yeah.
customer
I mean,
parking.
We're not looking for anything huge. What this is, we sell 4 cars. We sell a car, we bring another one in. We're not gonna stack them anywhere else. If we don't have the space for them, you can't put them there, so. I mean, 4 cars is better than no cars.
I don't know, I'll leave it up to the board to decide what we wanna do with this.
I mean, it's a commercial property, it's zoned for it. I mean, what else anything I do with that property is, I know it's a small property. But it's also a legal use property. And I know I can't put 10 cars for sale out there, but we're not proposing 10 cars, we're proposing 4 cars. If that's the limit, then that's the limit. I mean, we're not gonna try to squeeze more cars in there than what we can fit.
What are you doing for signage? What are you proposing?
Just on the building.
So no sort of ground sign, anything like that?
You know, no big sign out front,
Yeah,
just
it's a
on the
building.
building.
It's on the building.
Yeah. And we know it's a residential, you know, partially residential, commercial, it's, we're not, I mean, we're not looking to light it up all night and, you know, offend neighbors there as well.
The neighbors aware of this? Has there been any discussion with particularly the immediate abutter to your right?
Yes,
And
no issues. You guys got a better idea of what to do on that property? I mean, it's, you know,
3,700 square feet, I don't think so.
well, I understand it doesn't have to be big to be legal. It's illegal.
I don't wanna get into a debate about that,
No, no, I know,
that, because
I know.
technically speaking, any property under 5,000 square feet in the state of Massachusetts
Yeah,
doesn't have grandfather protection for anything other than what's been there when that was adopted in 1956. That's less than that.
yeah.
The other problem I see, and I don't see how we get away from it, is that typically, used car licenses that come through the Board of Selectmen say that all vehicles have to be a minimum of 15 feet from the edge of the street. Well, that takes every one of those spaces away, because there isn't one of those that's more than 15
But
feet
there
from the edge
isn't
of the
a one
street.
car would, any car dealership that I see in town, I went out there and actually measured it to see how far they're from the street. That's not any different from,
Well, they're supposed to be 15 feet, and they repeatedly move the ones down on 106 at the end of Laurel Street.
I understand that,
Each time they creep out, they
Yeah.
get moved back again.
okay,
But they have space to put them back there.
yeah.
If you take the 15 feet off this, you don't even have space to put them. At least for 3 of them, probably 4 of them.
So if I turn it into an office building and I have to park 15 feet off the street to be able to use it as an office building?
Well, customers and people that go there can park in the public parking, because it's downtown, which is along the street front.
Right, which is,
But you
right,
can't put vehicles for sale along the street front.
I understand
They
that,
have to be on the property.
but they are on the property, and it's 10, from my edge of my property to the edge of the road is 10 feet.
Well, that's not the edge of the road. The edge of the road is where that line is labeled edge of the road, not the pavement. Those are 2 different things.
Well, to me, the edge of the pavement is the edge of the road.
Right, but there's a road layout which extends beyond the pavement.
Yeah.
The pavement's a certain width, the road layout that the town actually owns goes
Yeah,
beyond.
it's like the sidewalk area, whatever you wanna call it.
Yeah, not necessarily sidewalk, but
Again, I'll leave it up to the board. If someone wants to make a motion on the site plan application, feel free to do so. Otherwise, by default, it goes back to the building inspector, and he's free to issue the building permit.
And I've spoken to the building inspector and reviewed it with him, he had no issues with it.
I'd move to reject the site plan application based on lack of compliance with, well, based on the fact that the use is, and the manner of display shown on the plan is not appropriate to the area where the land is located. Let's put it that way.
So I guess I'll take that as a motion. Riley, is there any second to that motion?
I'll second it for discussion.
Okay, so we've got a motion on the table to reject it, but let's discuss what would it take to be added to that, so we would be willing to vote in favor of it.
I mean,
Because I think what we want to remember is our vote and whatever we pass on to the building commissioner, i.e. zoning enforcement officer, is an advisory opinion under site plan approval. So we do have the authority to request, were we to approve that, a more detailed plan that clearly shows exactly where everything is, exactly how it's gonna be done, and exactly what the building's gonna look like. If we deny it, then it's basically up to the zoning enforcement officer, building commissioner, to use his best judgment when they come in for a building permit, so.
So if the vehicles have to be more than 15 feet from the street, is that correct?
That's
Off the
what,
street?
that's what I've been told all the licenses are, and I know they repeatedly have a issue with the guy that happens to be up on the intersection of Laurel Street and Route 106, because he repeatedly pushes the vehicles, a lot of them big pickup trucks, right out to the edge of the roadway, so that when you're coming up Laurel Street and you look to the right, you're looking at parked vehicles in the used car lot. You don't have clear view up 106 because of the curve that it's on. And they repeatedly tell him he's gotta get him back the 15 feet that's
I mean, you're not-
required.
This here, you're not obstructing any, there's no obstruction from the turn there. It's because this is set back, you got the parking area, the white line,
Well,
Right.
I'm not saying there is, it's just, that's been on all the licenses, to my knowledge, for a long time.
and I've gone to Paul Wolf Motors, and I've measured where the car is from, where the car is parked to the street. It's not 15 feet. And I've gone down 18, measuring these cars, where the cars are parked to the road. They're not 15 feet.
I'm not sure how relevant that is, because that's not, well, I don't know what was shown on their plan, and they might do something afterwards, and that's an enforcement issue. Your plan shows us
You actually show the
on the
parking
edge of the road
within
here.
that
That's
area.
not 15 feet, that's not. So, I mean, I don't know what Paul Wolf's plan was, or I don't know what 106 Motor, I don't know what was on that plan, I wasn't on the board. I'm just saying, if we're approving this, we're approving this plan where we know it's a violation.
So if you guys knew it's a violation, why am I spending money on engineers?
This plan is a violation.
But this is the
Maybe-
plan I originally submitted, like, you guys keep telling me, well, we're not sure where the property lines are, so I'm spending money on that. You guys, now it's another issue. If this was gonna be shut down, if an issue right from the beginning, why was it shut down from the very beginning, instead of me spending money on this and him spending money on it, when nothing's been
Well,
changed?
We didn't know that until we got that. And we didn't get that till well after we started this process, and the land court plan popped up. We didn't have that originally.
And I don't, why'd the land court thing pop up? I mean, I had an
That's where all
engineer,
those numbers come from. It says right on there. They didn't resurvey that. They used the information off the land court plan, and he included the registered certificate number.
but it's correct.
We're not disputing that, but we didn't have that the first couple of times we
Good, because I
discussed
gave it
this.
to you with the septic design, the same exact plan that when I first submitted it, which was, I got the picture of right here. This is what I had submitted, which is engineered by Hayward. Same exact plan that I just spent money on, having it resurveyed and drawing this up and all this other stuff that, I mean, I keep spending money, and every time I come in here, you guys are telling me something else. Nothing's changed on this.
First of all, that plan says they didn't survey it.
Because
It
they
says,
went by,
it says right on there, data
Yes.
compiled.
because they went by the survey plan that I gave them.
It was
And then you guys-
compiled, right.
Yep. So I gave you a survey plan by Hayward, and then you guys asked me to, you didn't believe that that's the boundaries, so I had to resurvey it again, because there was a boundary issue, because of the railroad beds that used to run through there. And nothing's changed on the latest survey I got. I mean, I can move the building right up to the edge of the road and then move it right up to the edge of the property on the right-hand side according to the building inspector, because that's what it's zoned for, if that's what I chose to do. I know it's a small lot, but at the same time, I'd like to make it a usable lot. We're not trying to make this lot worse looking or just collect taxes on and not do anything with. I pay my taxes, I wanna be able to use it. It's a commercial lot, it's zoned for it. I mean, you guys wanna buy it from me, so I don't have to deal with this, but I'm paying taxes on it. And I want it to be usable.
So I don't know where we go here. We've got a motion on the table and a second to that motion. I'll just state again that if we,
I'm gonna withdraw the motion.
all right, so the motion has been withdrawn.
I mean, I'm not in favor of the idea. I don't think it fits really with the area. I'd be more
But if it's,
acceptable to it if you move the cars back along the property line back here,
that's fine, I don't have a problem with that.
not out by the street.
If-
I can move car like this.
We
like
can,
a-
we can move them,
cross like this.
if you rather
It's
than,
just me, you know.
if you rather
I-
than be
again, I don't-
up against
I
the
can move
back,
the car.
the
Rob,
back,
can you
that's
pull
not
up
a
the
problem.
photo again?
I mean, I have no problem putting it
Move
further
the car
back.
like this. Straight like.
No, he's just saying further back instead
Yeah.
of forward,
Yeah.
Well, no, I'm saying,
move it back towards the
instead of,
back lot.
instead of perpendicular with the road, they'd go parallel. So you get maybe 3 in there, and
And
keep the
that's-
one on the other side of the building, it gives you
that-
4.
That's not an issue at all.
Yeah.
That's just, that's my thought. Again, I don't think
We're
it
trying to
fits in
make
the
the buil-
area, I don't,
I mean, we're trying to make the building better, I'm trying to make the property usable. I know it's gonna generate more taxes because everything does that gets, upgraded and made better, just because that's
is
how
any of this
everything works.
vegetation, trees, any of that getting taken out?
Yeah, we're gonna trim a lot of it back. I mean, the vegetation to the right,
That's right.
against the fence there.
Yeah, all that's coming
Yeah,
out.
the neighbor actually wanted to take them all down himself, but I chose to leave it for now because, I don't wanna see the house, but if it needs to be taken down, then
Is that pavement there?
that's pavement, yes. And that runs behind, all the way from that location, all the way to, that was behind,
Behind the building is build space.
I can't think of the mechanic there, around the corner.
No, Almeida's, or Batty.
Yeah, there used to be a paved area adjacent to the railroad bed all the way from Central Street to
Yeah, I think Paul-
Union Street.
Yeah, I think that goes behind Paul Wolf Motors right now.
And the rail bed in that section is still,
Yeah.
is still listed at the Registry of Deeds being some railroad company.
And that's my thought, I understand you wanna use it, again, I don't think it fits in the area, but it is zoned for it. If you just
We have no,
move 'em
I
back.
mean, I have no problem paving up to the side, paving the sidewalk, getting that whole area cleaned up, or crushed stone in the.
Oh, I'd like to leave us all grass and just have the cars back here.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll do an affirmative motion. I'll move to grant site plan approval based on compliance with section 13.2 of the bylaws with the following conditions: that the entire exterior of the building be refinished, that on-site parking be limited to 4 spaces, one for the employee owner and 3 for display, and that all parking spaces be parallel to the rear lot line on paved surface, or other pervious surface.
I'll second that.
All right, so we've got a motion and a second. Do we have any further discussion on that motion? All those in favor of the
So,
motion?
so just so we're clear.
Yep.
That's the entire exterior of the building gets cleaned up.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
I mean, when you say cleaned up, like, paint, you know, just the front being done,
Not just the front.
right.
Yeah, the
right, no,
whole thing, I mean,
oh, Absolutely.
Yep.
No, I
So
totally,
that it looks
look,
like-
I'm not gonna, you know, we wouldn't sell cars looking like that, I mean, that's
I
a
just,
barn.
yeah, well, make sure of that, that's all.
We have no problem upgrading the property, it's just, you know, that's the whole reason we're doing this, to upgrade the property.
And my suggestion would be that display vehicles be located to the west of the building and that the employee parking space be located to the east side of the building. That make sense, Rob? Along the rear lot line?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine.
All right, any further discussion on that motion?
And while not trying to pick, the applicant's pocket, you know, something that illustrates what we've
Talked about.
talked about.
Is it something that I can draw up and get your approval, or do you have to be an architect? I mean, it's a small property, there's nothing.
Yeah, I say, I'm not
Yeah.
trying to pick your pocket, I just wanted something on
Yeah,
paper
something
so
that
that we can
shows-
say, hey, this is what we talked about, this is what's supposed to be.
Yeah.
So, I think, Mr. Chairman, I think that we could accept something of a hand-drawn variety that kind of worked off of those thoughts.
Yeah, I think we could do that, and I think we probably want something, as silly as this may sound, that looks more like the original sketch you gave us that we actually denied. The original sketch that you gave us back in April, May, and June, when we originally denied it in June,
Yeah, please, do you have that up there, because, did you happen to have?
which showed a 10-foot buffer zone between the property line and where you were gonna put stuff.
I know what you're saying now.
Because that went away in the latest version, and
Right.
it put stuff right out on the street line.
Right, I see, I know what you're saying.
And that would in fact require at least one or two of the cars to be parked
Yeah.
horizontally, if you will, instead of vertically.
Right,
And that I would just add to the motion that to the greatest extent possible, that the existing grass areas be left as grass areas.
Yeah, within reason, as much
Oh,
of
yeah.
the grass stays there as
it's no
possible.
problem, I mean, it's gonna be mowed, it's gonna be fertilized, you know, we wanna keep it nice, so.
Okay? So any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? We'll show that as 6 in favor, none opposed. That's a unanimous vote of the members present. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, some other updates. Whitmarsh Lane is currently in a construction mode. My understanding is they expect to be done removing the cul-de-sac before the winter hits. They've already started. I haven't been there in the last few days, but they had already started doing some work a week or so ago. They expect to put the finished sidewalks in the springtime. So I expect shortly after that, they'll be coming to us with their package for roadway acceptance, or at least the beginning of that. Just to be aware, we've been told that the owners of the building where, I think it's called Triple D Tree Service, operates out of Highland Street, actually have a gun shop license and have been discharging firearms outside the building on certain days. That area immediately abuts Captain's Way, which is a residential subdivision, so I don't see anything that we as a planning board have direct interest in there under the laws that we work under, but there was a complaint filed with the Planning Building Department's office, so I thought we should all be aware of that. I'm not sure when that actually happened. when that license was given and how they operate that, but we've been told by the Board of Selectmen's office that there is an active license at that location.
Yeah.
There's also a childcare center in the building, I believe. I'll leave it at that. That's really up to the building commissioner and the selectmen, as well as the police department. I don't know how they handle all of that, but the initial feedback I got informally was that they're not allowed to discharge weapons outside the building. And I'll leave it at that. There was a resident who was just purchased a home down on Daisy Lane that was, I guess we'll say, filed a complaint with the planning building department that his drainage area that is physically on his lot wasn't emptying after a storm. It has been inspected. There were some issues that are being worked on. My only comment that with my background on the board, that it's extremely difficult for those drainage areas to work 100% correctly while they're physically under construction. There was one specific problem that they were looking at, that they hadn't built the outlet structure on that drainage area. Informal feedback I got was they hadn't built the outlet structure to prevent siltation leaving that drainage structure into the abutting wetlands, but that's being worked on by our consultant, so I think at this point, as a board, we don't need to do anything more than that. I did see a letter today, I believe, that was forwarded, I believe, to the planning building department, as well as a copy to myself, that National Grid is apparently has on their construction schedule to actually install the many years delayed streetlights on Victory Lane. And my understanding is that's in a 2 to 4 week window, I think, if I remember correctly, reading the, now that my email is working almost perfectly. So we are still holding a road bond, and we still haven't received the acceptance documents for that to become a public way yet, because we were waiting for them to resolve the streetlight issue.
Roy, would we have EP do like an as-built review of that?
We certainly can,
I know there's one issue down there
okay?
that a resident brought to my attention.
So we certainly could ask EP to take a look at that. We certainly want to make sure that at a minimum, the as-built appears to meet the spirit of the original subdivision plan that was approved. And if not, whatever didn't get done per the original subdivision plan is done satisfactorily to reasonably meet the intended drainage requirements, and all of that was on the original plan, so certainly we could have EP take a look at that. There is ongoing, it's like citizens, something, training, whatever it is that's ongoing. I understand it's being sponsored by the state, and there's state money being spent to do that, but they're webinars, if you will, that are being put on by various parties, available virtually on the web. There was an email that I think was sent to everybody earlier today that listed the 10, or I think it listed 10, I think 2 of them, or maybe 3 of them gone by on dates, but there's still at least, I think, 7 more coming up. So you could take a look at those. Some of those have to do with, at least one of them has to do with special permits. I think one of them had to do with site plans, although that may be the same one. But there is some 10 of those. The majority of them seem to be dealing with primarily land use development, things like that, but that email I read really quickly because I was in the middle of several other things, but and I think the email did have a link on it, I think, right?
No, we just sent a picture of the workshops.
Wasn't there a web path that said where where you could go to see more?
Yes.
I'm not gonna find it right now, because I've got, just since the meeting started, 28 new emails, so. Oh, okay, there is one other thing I wanted everyone to be aware of, is that we still have pending what was a Form A for what's been referred to as Castle Place, which was formerly the primary home of John Ritter. It's up off the back of the golf course. House is actually in Whitman. Access to the house is through East Bridgewater. I did send an email, which I know Kevin was copied on it. I would ask in the morning if the office could forward that to the entire board.
Whole entire
I-
application?
Yeah, if you would, please. A copy of the application with the date stamp on it. It kind of leaves a parcel in no man's land that's only some 36 feet wide, which under Form A zoning, and any pieces of land that owned by abutting properties have to be shown as part of a Form A lot if they're less than the zoning requirement in the district. Zoning requirement in that district is 150 feet. Still not entirely sure what's going on there, but the email that was sent, I think, explains part of that. I did offer to the applicant, Janelle Rotundi, John Ritter's daughter, who's currently working on the estate issues, as I understand it, and would like to sell that property. I did offer to her the potential to withdraw that Form A at this point in time, so I don't have to write denied on it, until such time as they can sort out that little piece that you see, that you see sitting right there.
Oh.
Because that's still being shown as a standalone piece, and a new Form A plan, you're not allowed to do that. That's commonly owned with the property in the back and the property here. The Form A is gonna split some of that apart, but that can't stand as a separate lot. If it's shown as part of that back lot, there's a second issue that gets triggered. That second issue is that the deed for 64 Old Oak Street, when that was sold in 2011, includes that. Because that frontage from that point to that point is 156 feet. 64 Old Oak Street, to be sold legally in 2011, had to show 150 feet minimum. So at some point, somehow, that property ended up back off of 64. Don't know how that happened, and I'm not gonna try and untangle the deeds at the registry, but when it was sold out of the common property, and Ritter ownership, the deed specifically states 156 feet of frontage on Old Oak Street. So I'll leave it at that. We'll see if we can get that sorted out somehow as we go. I did copy town council on that email as well, along with several attachments, including the deed and several of the actual drawings, so. So I guess we're back to the outstanding minutes, unless, does anyone have anything else other than the minutes that we have? What's our pleasure on the minutes?
Move the table until the next meeting.
All right, so for just one more time, can we make sure that everyone has copies of all 4 sets of those minutes
They do.
in PDF form and sent out by email tomorrow? So everyone can look those over, and if the changes need to be made, email back to the office what those changes need to be? So that we can act on them at our next meeting, which is 2 weeks from tonight, I believe. Is that correct? It's 2 weeks from tonight, right?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Okay?
One other question, so our next meeting is December 5th. That following Monday, either we're having a meeting or we're not, December 11th?
Yeah, so we're briefly talking about having a meeting December 12th in lieu of the December 19th, but I believe the room is booked. So that means we would have one meeting in December, December 5th, or make it another night of the week, not a Monday.
So do we have any upcoming public hearings?
So our next meeting on the 21st, there's one public hearing.
What is that one?
I believe it's 60 Franklin Street. They're coming back to have,
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
All right, but I believe, unless I'm giving too much credit to the applicant, that I believe that's going to get resolved at that hearing.
I believe so.
I think they clearly understand the issue we had,
That's our only public hearing, so.
so we should be able to take care of that night.
So would it be appropriate to just move the December meeting to the 12th and just have the one meeting in the month?
No, it would be, currently, I believe it's December 5th is our first December meeting, so that might end up being our only December meeting.
Right,
is
so that's what I'm
we're
saying,
doing.
if we move that to the 12th, puts it a little more toward the middle of the month.
Well, if it's December
I don't think
5th,
we can move it to the
can't,
12th
the
is the
room-
problem. I think the
I thought you
rooms are
said
all
the
booked.
19th was booked.
I believe the
The
rooms are all
19th
booked.
is also,
Both nights are booked.
yes.
so December
It
5th
would
is
have
booked?
to be a different day of the week.
So
Tuesday
we
through Friday.
currently have the room December 5th. That's our meeting that we've
All
had
right, so that should be
for a
enough.
long
That should be
time.
enough for December.
The next meeting was gonna be the 19th, but as you know, that's our annual.
Well, it's too late now to have a hearing on the 19th anyway, because they don't have enough.
I think we'll be okay if we just have a meeting December 5th. So what we're saying is if there's an issue, we might have to have it not on a Monday, because there's no Mondays left in December.
Yeah, we'll cross that bridge when we get to
We're
that
just
point.
trying to give everyone a little.
What's the, we should be okay for January though, I think, right?
Yes, we did also,
Yes,
I
it's
saw
in
that.
front of
we
you.
I
did
saw that.
do, just for some reason, we should probably get that soon so we can get the room booked ahead of time for that now.
Why don't we actually put that on our agenda to finalize for our next meeting? Put that on our agenda, to finalize the schedule for, as best we can, for 2023 at our next meeting, so that can get filed with the town clerk.
Okay. For the most part, they're still the first and third Mondays of the month, I believe, except for January. There would have been a holiday on every Monday. So we threw in a not first and third. I believe we picked the second week. Just as a suggestion, if you wanted to have a meeting in January, it would have to be the second Monday of the month.
Because the first and third of this January are
Holidays.
both holidays, right? So we should have at least one meeting, so. Yeah, I don't have any problem with that. We'll just, let's take a look at that. That did go out, and I do believe, if I remember correctly, when I
The agenda.
went through my 87 or 88 emails that I recovered from Comcast that all had planning board matters that, but my computer is really fast now, so, well, I can't read that fast, but
Yeah.
let's take a look at that and be ready to discuss and vote that so we can get that recorded with the town clerk before the end of the year, so she has that. And there is there a copy, does everybody have a copy of this on the table, or is this just my copy? Okay,
Has everyone got an email?
yeah. Okay,
One thing I'll say, just apropos of stuff like that, and even with minutes, I appreciate that we don't want to do binders and so forth every week, but some of this material would be helpful, I think, at least to me, to have copies of it available here at the meeting so that, you can refer to them. And
yeah, so
I don't know
I
how other
think
people feel, but that's how I.
we're gonna have some further discussions as we move on, but I think moving forward, whenever we have a public hearing, we're gonna have hard copies of even if it's just a boilerplate of the potential decision applicable, whether it's a subdivision or a special permit, on the table the night of the initial public hearing.
Well, I thought we already did that.
I think we did that the last time, but We'll also work out, and Kevin and I discussed this today, we will work out some new language and slightly updated formatting for those decisions to make sure that when we have a special permit hearing, we just pull the current and the right current decision down for the template to start with. I think we've made a bunch of progress in the last few weeks, slower than it should be because of my technical incapacity over the last month or so, but hopefully that's a thing of the past.
So,
We'll work on that going forward. We're gonna do some more work on the minutes too. I think we want the minutes a little bit more bulleted with a little less verbiage and more detail as to specifically what we do. Not what was said in the meeting or any of that, just what we actually
well,
do.
we were doing that.
They're much better than they were before, and I don't wanna, we'll let the motion sit that we're gonna do that next meeting, so let's all look at them and do it next meeting, all right?
Can I just ask quickly, so back to the binders, Kevin, so just when we're having a public hearing, everyone would like a binder, or do you all want to go back to the binders every meeting?
No, I don't, I'm not suggesting that. What I'm suggesting is that, you know, for example, I think minutes should be available for review. Whether it's 1 copy, 5 copy, but I mean, there should be something that's physically here. And the same thing with regard to the schedule, like that, you know, documents like that. I mean, Rob does, I think, a great job with this, so for my purposes, this is fine, to look at exhibits and maps and plans and stuff like that. But, you know, all sort of these other miscellaneous things are the things that I'm talking about that, you know, maybe get sent out to us, but don't, you know, unless everybody's diligent enough to copy them and bring them, it's like, I don't have recollection of it. You know. Just a couple copies available would be helpful.
All right, so I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll second that.
You have to make it first.
Well, then I'll make it.
Okay, so we got a motion, O'Leary, I believe.
Yes.
That noise, was that a motion?
That was, yeah, that was it. No, that's the bells, but
We got a motion, O'Leary. Second, Lawler, to adjourn, and
Sure.
we'll call it 8:35 PM. All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
I
All those opposed, thank you all. We're adjourned at 8:35 PM.
A pleasure.